Hello there, YouTube model building community. Dwayne here again with take number 2 of my Baldwin Motion Camaro video. I managed to screw up and we won't get into it. Anyhow, little history on the Baldwin Motion cars. This 70 and a half they call it, Camaro. Is one that I'm doing, so I'll focus mostly on it, and then throughout the video series I'll throw in some other little tidbits of the history of Baldwin Motion, and hopefully it's some stuff you guys didn't know and learn, and hey, if anybody else has any information on it that I don't know, or if I'm incorrect on some of my information, let me know. There's not a lot of information out there on the internet, and a lot of what I learned is from an interview that I listened to on YouTube, and I can't remember the channel of it, but there was an interview with Joel Rosen and Marty Shore, who were the kind of it was their brainchild. So Joel Rosen was the master performance man there. He is the owner of the Motion Performance shop, and they were the ones that did all the performance upgrades to the cars that were sold, and they were ultimately sold through the Baldwin Chevrolet dealership on Long Island, New York there. So Motion Performance originated in New Jersey, I believe, and the name Motion came from an aftermarket ignition box that Joel was installing on some of his customer cars there. So interesting way to pick your name, but anyways, that's good enough name for me. So anyhow, once he outgrew his little shop in New Jersey, he found himself a larger shop out in Long Island there. So, and then from there, that's where the legend was born. So anyhow, in a nutshell, really, they hooked up with the Baldwin Chevrolet dealership, and the Baldwin Chevrolet dealership would take orders. I believe Marty Shore was heavily involved he was really the guy that was involved in the marketing side of things there. So I don't know who took the orders. I think actually Joel Rosen took some of the orders himself as well, but I really don't know all the details on how they operated. I just know that that's where they sold the cars, through the Baldwin dealership, and those cars, particularly the 1970, they came with full factory warranty, and they also, the Phase 3 70 Camaro came with a written guarantee that the car would run mid 11 seconds in the quarter mile. So I don't know if there was anybody else out there at that time that was guaranteeing that their cars were that quick, but the Baldwin Motion people did. So anyhow, a lot of what they did, they essentially what they did was they took a customer order on the cars, color maybe, trim package, whatever options that they wanted, and then the car was delivered from the dealer, or from GM, to the Motion Performance shop, where they would yard the engine and go to work on installing mostly they installed the LS7 454 engine that had all, they'd actually tweaked themselves at the shop, um, with a camshaft, intake manifold, carburetor. Then they'd add a aftermarket ignition system. And I believe they put aftermarket tachometers in them as well. And those engines, they were offering two engine packages at that time in the big blocks. 525 horse 454 and a 535 horse 454. So it was pretty serious stuff for back then, anyhow. And the cars also, they installed frame connectors, traction bars, aftermarket shocks, and they typically changed the rear axle ratio in them. In 1970, you couldn't get a 454 Camaro with 488 rear axle ratio, so they had to do it all there at the shop. And then they'd have a custom paint stripe scheme that they'd add to the car as well, which I believe they actually sent out to a local body shop that they worked with that did those upgrades for them. So, but like I say, I can get into the history a little bit deeper as the build goes on here. I'm going to do a video series, so. But with this video, I'll show you basically where I'm at with it, which isn't too far, and some of the issues that I found with some of the components, and some of the things that I'm going to do in terms of fabrication that the model kit doesn't provide. So, and we'll start with the main floor pan, which I've got in paint right now. Came up with that color. That is a Tester's metallic green enamel. It comes in a spray can. I decanned the paint and spray it through an airbrush. With this particular color, I actually did a couple test spoons. I found with gray primer, the paint was a little bit on the bright side, pretty much identical to what the color of the cap on the spray can was, which wasn't what I was after, but what I felt was I could either darken it down with a little bit of black, or I experimented, and basically what I come up with is just black base under this and the green as it come out of the can. So, and it's quite a noticeable difference. I used between the black base and the gray primer base on it. So this color I like a lot. I really didn't like it sprayed over the gray primer at all. So, but we're good there now. So so not a lot in the way of modifications that I'm going to do here. The Baldwin motion cars came with traction bars, which the kit supplies, so that's a nice touch that they added in there. They also installed frame connectors in the Motion Performance shop. So I'm going to fab up some frame connectors for it, keeping them pretty simple. I have not laid my eyes on any photographs of any of the frame connectors that they were using at that time. I haven't read any details or anything like that. So what I'm basically going to do is come up with just simple, straightforward, weld-in style frame connectors for this car. which I would think would have been fairly typical in 1970 for what they would have been using. I know nowadays you can get all these ridiculously, fancy Hotchkiss on these cradles and whatnot, but I'm fairly positive that back in 1970 they were kept pretty simple. So I don't even know if they were using bolt-in frame connectors back in those days. I was born in '69, so I was a little young for knowing what they were using exactly back then. So, but anyhow, so I'll do the frame connectors, fabricate those, and the other thing that I'm going to fabricate is a Hone overdrive unit that a lot of these cars had. Not every one of them had the Hone overdrive. They were a unit that was highly recommended when the customer was ordering the car, particularly because they had highly recommended a 488 rear axle ratio, which is a pretty steep gear for highway use. You'd get away for ripping around town with that, but once you got out on the highway, she'd be singing pretty good. Big motors, and they don't like to do that, I don't think, for too long. So, and the Hone overdrive unit is just a standalone unit that other than 1-to-1 ratio, it had one overdrive ratio in it. The car had to be shifted the overdrive had to be shifted with the car in neutral. Couldn't be shifted on the fly, so, and they added an aftermarket lever on the passenger side of the transmission tunnel that you'd have to pull it and engage the overdrive unit, and then off you'd go. You'd have you know what, it escapes my memory as to what the actual final drive ratio would have been, but it would have been somewhere in the 308 to I want to say 356 rear axle ratio, but I don't know 100% what it was. I had read or heard somewhere at one time what that axle ratio was, but it was very, very much a highway friendly ratio. So that's something I want to add to this kit. Give a bit more authentic anyways. I'm sure that there were some of these cars out there that didn't have the overdrive unit, but I know, if I was to have one, I'd want that for sure. So, but anyhow, other than the floor pan, I don't think there's much else that I need to do in terms of add-ins to get it a bit more, like the real thing was back in the day. I particularly like the AMT 70 kit because it does actually come with some of the other features that the motion cars had. And one of those main features was the actual motion valve covers, which said motion right in the middle of the valve cover. I'm hoping that'll focus enough. I don't know if you can read it. I can't. I don't know if it's upside down or what, but anyhow, trust me, it's in there. It says it, motion, and that's a great little touch there. So that's, I may actually make some copies of these and use them on, because I do have a couple of the Revell kits. I have the 69 Baldwin Motion 427 car, as well as the 70 Chevelle Baldwin Motion car, which those kits, other than the stripes, and I think the air cleaner on the Chevelle. Other than that, they're basically just the Chevelle and Camaro kits, and the hoods, the L88 hoods that were specific to Baldwin Motion cars of the day, anyways. The only other car that had the L88 hood was the 427 Corvette with the L88 in it, which wasn't a very common. It was a very rare car because GM, for some reason, preferred to push a lower output 427 in their Corvettes. But anyway, that's a whole other history lesson there. So, but anyways, so aside from that, what I've got going now is I've managed to get the subframe mostly assembled. This subframe, actually, I'll show you a comparison. I have the 70 Camaro Z28 kit, which is molded in orange, but it's very much the same kit. And what I didn't like about the subframe in this kit is, come on, focus. As you can see, on the top of the subframe, it's wide open, and they were not like that in those days, or ever. So what I decided to do with mine was I just took some thin sheet styrene and boxed the top of that subframe in, which wasn't really a big deal to do. I just cut some, as thin as you can get. Come on. As thin as you can get. And just glued it in there, trimmed it off, did some sanding to it, and came out pretty good. So I'm happy with that. Got a little bit of fine work to do on that subframe. There's a couple of scratches in it that I want to get out, and I'll repaint it, and we'll move on from there. So otherwise, really, you know, I've got the springs painted silver. I got the engine painted, which is all sitting out in the shop right now, which I can't show you. So I've got the intake painted silver. Again, I like to do a little black wash, a lot of black wash on the rear springs. I'd like to dull those down and get them to look more like you know, a steel type look to them. And I just like to put a little black wash on the intake just to give it a more realistic look, because the silver, the aluminum paint, I think I'm using chrome silver, Tamiya chrome silver for that stuff, and it's just really bright, so I'll just, you know, get it looking a little more realistic. So another thing that I had to do, and when I get once I bring the wheels in, because I stripped the chrome off the wheels. They're a Krager SS wheel. One of the front wheels on them has a big sink mark right in the edge of the rim, and that drives me nuts. So I did a fairly simple repair to that, and I'll show you how I did it. In the next video, I'll show you how I did it once I get the wheels in here. And then I just re-chromed them with the Spastics chrome paint there, so they'll be looking pretty good. I do love the tires on this car. They come with a bigger rear tire. Got I think these are Mickey Thompson Indy tires. Pretty sure they are. Anyways, and they got a really nice detail in the tread. Come on, you. It will focus. It just doesn't like to focus easily. No, come This not gonna focus. I think the getting stuff to focus in on the black stuff is a little more difficult. Let's see. All right, enough of that. Anyways, I'll get a nice up close shot of the tread on those tires for you guys at some point in time. Nice tires though. Other than that, a few other things in primer. Getting the chassis together first. I've started some work on the body. The lower front roll pan there. What I've done here, I don't know if you can see it, but I've filled. There's a license plate supposed to mount here on it, and I filled that in with some styrene. In Alberta here, we don't even get issued a front license plate for our vehicles, so if I had this car in Alberta, I would probably have that filled in as well. So I filled it in there, give a nice little cleaner look on the front end, and don't have to have a license plate hanging off of it. The body itself, of course, it comes with the L88 style hood scoop, which personally I love, especially on the 1970 Camaros. You know, those, they didn't even, in 1970, if you bought a Camaro, even a Z28, whatever, you got a plain flat hood and that was it. So it's nice. They didn't even come with a cowl hood on those cars back then. So, but anyways, I love the L88 hood for these cars. So, and I got some aftermarket hood pins with cables and so forth that I'm gonna install in here as well. I've shaved off the kit molded ones. They come molded right in the front there, so I've sanded those out, and we'll do some aftermarket hood pins on it. I've never done them before, so it should be interesting. So the body itself, few issues to work out of it. Sink mark on the roof there, where there's an interior dome light there, so that had to be filled in. And there's a little bit of work to do on the top of the right fender here. A tiny bit of filler and just some nice, just block sanded out. There's a couple of funny little spots there, but not an overabundance of work there. It was just hard to find that. And I go over the whole thing with my hand, and you could feel it in there, so I went to work on it. And then tail pan, it doesn't fit that well on this kit. It requires a fair bit of work, so I've as you can see, I got some filler here. I gotta sand that out, and I've massaged it a fair bit to fit as good as I think I can get it to fit, so which shouldn't be a big deal. And the lower trim piece on the driver or passenger side of this car is a big sink mark down the middle, and it's wavy, it's ugly, it's nasty. It needs to be sanded out nice and flat. The one on the driver's side is basically perfect. So, but the nice thing is there seems to be a fair bit of meat in there that I can work with. So I'll get that. I haven't started it. I actually just noticed it here tonight, so I'll get after that. And then the mirrors, there's little spots for the mirrors to sit into. They're like a little rectangular indentation here. I didn't like the way the mirrors fit at all, so what I've done here is gone ahead and I'm just filled them in, and then I'm gonna file the mirrors nicely level on the bottom, get them to fit on there, and that should take care of the body. The panel lines I'm gonna rescribe on there because they're not very deep, and really, that's pretty much where I'm at with it right now, fellas. So I will I'll keep you updated. Get another video up here as soon as I can. This one's gone on fairly long, so it's actually longer than the first one that I did that I made the mistakes on. I was trying to make it shorter. So, but anyways, I'll let you go. We'll see you on the next update. Thanks.